Hello everyone, thanks so much for joining us for teleSur's English. I'm Cody Weddle and this is From the South. We start today in the Dominican Republic. That's where the OAS, the Organization of American States, has begun its General Assembly amid strong criticism following recent actions by Secretary General Luis Almagro. Now, during the start of this meeting, Venezuelan Foreign Minister Delcy Rodriguez blasted Almagro for interfering in her country's domestic affairs. Almagro has attempted to invoke the so-called Democratic Charter to suspend Venezuela from the organization, but member states instead voted unanimously to back mediated talks between the Venezuelan government and opposition parties. The embattled former head of Brazil's lower house of Congress, Eduardo Cunha, will likely be expelled from his post over ethics violations. The Congressional Ethics Committee voted this afternoon to expel the lawmaker. The issue will now go to a vote in the lower house, where at least half of lawmakers must vote against him. Cunha has already been suspended for more than a month for intimidating Congress and obstructing investigations against him. He was a key figure in the coup against President Dilma Rousseff, which has temporarily ousted her from power. The Honduras National Energy Company has announced that beginning this month, electric bills there are going to increase at least 30%. Now, the company says the measure will help reduce their deficit, but many fear the move will hit Honduras's poor the hardest. Our correspondent Gerardo Torres there reports that many fear they will have to choose between food, medicine, and electricity.
Juana Zelaya has a small diner in the Guadalupe neighborhood of the Honduran capital, and for her, the government's announcement that energy bills are going up is a big problem. She can't increase the price of food because people are barely able to buy a meal now, and she is only making enough to break even and have a little left over.
Before we paid less for energy. We didn't have these high bills. I only paid 300 lempiras or $13. Now I pay 600 lempiras. I rent this place for 500 lempiras, plus 100 lempiras for electricity. If they raise the price, it will really put me out, because everything will be more expensive.
In Honduras, 60% of the population are poor. The cost of electricity is set to increase by between 30 and 50%. The National Energy Company has said that the rate hike is in response to the company's financial troubles. But lawyer Rixi Moncada has a different opinion. She managed the company from 2006 until 2009, and she says that the move is a result of privatizing the company. Now many of its services are controlled by private banks, and pay centers or the expansion of coverage are now private and much more expensive.
Everyone knows that when they broke up the national company, they created 3 trust funds to administer it and handed this to the national banks Atlantida, Ficosa, and Continental. Under these trust funds, the banks began to charge a fee to administrate the money and services of the energy company. The problem is that as users, we haven't seen any improvement in the services.
Privatization began 3 years ago. According to the government, it was the only way to rescue the company that was left in disorder and corruption since the 2009 coup d'etat. The trust funds mean that the banks now receive money even if they don't administer the company. This has created a growing deficit in the company's numbers, and the company is now turning to the impoverished population to help make up the difference. Gerardo Torres, teleSur's, Honduras.
A riot and fire erupted late Monday in the Barrientos prison in a Mexico City suburb, prompting authorities there to send in hundreds of police and firefighters. After the disturbance, nearly 150 relatives were seen there of inmates stood near the prison awaiting news while police officers cordoned off the area. Thankfully, no serious injuries there were reported. An online video shows the Frenchman who killed 2 police officers in Paris saying the Euro 2016 would be a graveyard. Now, the killer was carrying a hit list of VIPs, police, and journalists.
Vous nous avez fermé les portes vers les terres du Khilafa.
And the man who killed a French police couple at their home was acting on an order from the Islamic State group, we now know. According to French officials, La Rossi Abdallah was loyal to the leader of the militant group, Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi. Now, Abdallah was killed after police stormed the couple's home. Their 3-year-old son was not injured physically. And we stay in France, where at least 75,000 people protested in Paris over a labor reform. The protest turned violent and at least 40 people were injured, including 29 police officers. 58 people were arrested. Rail and taxi workers are also continuing with strikes. A German man accused of abducting and killing 2 young boys last year, including a 4-year-old refugee child, has gone on trial in Germany. Now, the refugee was taken from Berlin's Central Migrant Registration Center. According to police, the man confessed to sexually abusing the child, then strangling him in October. He also confessed to abducting and killing a 6-year-old German boy in July. The European Union Commissioner Johannes Hahn visited the seawater desalination plant in Gaza today and announced additional funding for the second phase. With more now, we turn to our correspondent, Noor Harrison.
EU Commissioner for European Neighbourhood Policy and Inland Agreement Negotiations Johannes Hahn visited Tuesday morning the EU-funded seawater desalination plant in central Gaza City. The senior official had arrived earlier in the day via the Erez crossing at the Gaza border with Israel. The construction of the plant is implemented in partnership with the Palestinian Water Authority and Gaza's coastal municipalities' water authorities.
During this period, Gazans have lived through 3 conflicts, the worst and most protracted in the summer of 2014. They have witnessed a rapid decline in living standards, including the lack of crucial access to fresh water and to reliable sources of power. At the political level, Gazans have suffered from the split with the West Bank. Together, all of these elements have conspired to make daily life almost unbearable for ordinary Gazans. This has to end.
Commissioner Hahn announced an additional funding of 10 million euros for the second phase of the project. The works of this phase will start in mid-June 2016 and are expected to be completed within 36 months. The EU has already invested 10 million euros in the first phase, which will produce 6,000 cubic meters of potable water daily and will provide over 75,000 Palestinians with safe drinking water in Khan Yunis and Rafah in the southern Gaza Strip.
And this plan is supposed to serve at the first phase 75,000 inhabitants which are living in the southern part of the Gaza Strip as a first phase. The next phase will also be expanded to cover around a 250,000 inhabitants of the southern part of the Gaza Strip. Well, challenges are a lot, especially in this area which is highly unstable politically. The last 2 years, the blockade which is still imposed in the Gaza Strip are major problems. However, future challenge that needs to be revealed, which is the crisis of electricity as well.
The only available water source in Gaza is the coastal aquifer, underlining the territory, which provides the Strip with 55 million cubic meters of water unfit for human consumption. The levels of salinity in the extracted water have dramatically risen in recent years due to the overpumping of the underground water. A 2012 United Nations report warned that Gaza's sole aquifer may become unusable by the end of 2016, with damages becoming irreversible by 2020. Nuharazin Telesuti.
Brazil's interim president, Michel Temer, toured the Olympic facilities in Rio de Janeiro earlier today. Now, Temer also met with the president of the International Olympics Committee, Thomas Bach, and some other authorities there. Temer promised federal funding to complete the construction needed for the quickly approaching games. The Olympics there kick off in Brazil on August 5th. And that's what we're covering on this Wednesday. Thanks so much for joining us. Plenty more on all of those stories and others at our website, telesurtv.net/English. For TeleSur English, I'm Cody Weddle. We'll see you back here tomorrow.